Act 2. Separate lives. Same house, Tayo's guilt to deepens. The love child still pressing in. They did not announce the separation, they simply practiced it. It began with a calendar on the fridge. At first, it was for school runs and swimming lessons. A grid of ordinary life. But as the days grew colder, two sets of handwriting began to divide the weeks like a border. B in neat blue ink, T in hurried black strokes. School drop-off B, hockey practice D, parent-teacher night B, Sunday groceries T. No one said the word separate. The calendar said it for them. Nights rearranged themselves. Bimbo took the bedroom. Tayo moved to the sofa with a blanket that never quite kept the draft away. He learned which springs in the couch complained the loudest when he turned. He learned that at 3:17 a.m., the building's heating rattled like a distant train, and at 5:46 a.m. the upstairs neighbor made coffee strong enough that its bitterness seemed to travel through the vents. In the mornings, the apartment became a choreography. The kettle sang while a blow-dryer roared in the bedroom. The bathroom door clicked. The cereal bowls slid across the counter. The children adapted with the unnatural grace of kids who understood grown-up rules before anyone explained them. They did not ask why Daddy slept in the living room now. They did not ask why Mummy's laugh had retired. They did not ask why the calendar had turned into a fence. Coats, Bimbo would say, and the children appeared in a line, zippers fastened, shoes matched, Tayo tied laces, checked backpacks, tucked a stray lock of hair behind his youngest's ear. Their hands brushed once over the lunchboxes, both pulled away as if from a hot pan. At the hospital, Tayo wore his other life like a good suit. He was crisp with patience, quick with comfort, easy with the nurses. He still knew how to draw a smile out of a frightened man waiting for test results, how to translate medical jargon into something a grandmother could hold. He still ended notes with a double underline that looked like confidence. Only in the stairwell between the 6th and 7th floors did he allow himself to stop, one hand gripping the rail, breath caught in that private space where no one asked a doctor how he was doing. Bimbo built a different rhythm. On Tuesdays and Thursdays she stayed late, joining a circle of women in a downtown co-working space with glass walls and ambitious plants. They exchanged cards and long, frank looks. They practiced introductions as if they were learning a new language. My name is Bimbo Adebayo. My experience is in procurement and operations. I'm exploring roles in supply chain management. Each time she said it, her voice steadied. Each time she said it, the room seemed to accept her statement as a fact the universe would soon honor. On Fridays, she met Sod from church at a cafe that felt like a refuge, baristas who knew how to steam milk to a hush, tables carved with initials that promised other people had survived their own untellable seasons. Sod asked questions that did not bruise. How are you sleeping? Are you eating? Have you remembered to want anything for yourself this week? Bimbo found that answering made her shoulders drop a fraction. It was not happiness, not yet, but it was a loosening. At home, dinner became the country where everyone had a passport and no one spoke. Tayo set the table because he could measure love in cutlery, forks facing the same way, glasses without water spots, soup ladled evenly as if fairness could be served by the spoonful. Bimbo cooked with a precise quiet that turned onions into sweetness and plantains into gold. The children ate bravely. The youngest hummed under her breath. Tolo, the eldest, stretched her words like thin ice that might break if she stepped too hard. How was practice? Tayo asked. Fine, said their son. How was your day? Bimbo asked a minute later. Good, said their youngest, and then added in a rush, as if to feed the air, we painted snowflakes. Beautiful, Bimbo said, smiling with her eyes at the child and not at the man across from her. Sometimes a phone would buzz, Teo learned to let it buzz. He kept Lagos lined in a silent folder with the screen turned face down as if darkness could soften obligation. After dinner he washed dishes, while Bimbo packed lunches. Their hands moved within the same small square of kitchen, careful as dancers who had agreed never to touch. On a Wednesday evening, the apartment windows fogged with the breath of stew. Tola hovered by the sink, twisting the dish towel. "Ma'am," she tried. Bimbo turned. "Yes, what?" "What happens if people who love each other don't like each other anymore?" The stew plopped quietly into the bowl. Bimbo's jaw tightened, then eased. "Then they learn a different way to love," she said, "one that makes room." Teo stood very still at the stove, pretending to watch the flame. He wanted to tell his daughter that room was not always kindness, sometimes it was simply distance. He wanted to tell her that he was trying, even when trying looked like leaving good things unbroken on the counter. He said nothing. He turned the knob down until the blue became a whisper. That night, the house slept with one ear open. Bimbo lay on the far side of the bed and stared at the dark, as if it might answer her, the shape of her future turning over like a key in a lock she hadn't yet found. On the sofa, Teo turned and the springs remembered him. He opened his phone, hovered over a message thread named only with a first initial. The last video thumbnail, his son's gap-toothed grin glowed like a small sun. He did not press play. He pressed the device against his chest and counted his breaths until morning. Saturdays belonged to logistics, groceries, laundry, or $12 in quarters for the building machines. The calendars split columns at the supermarket. They moved through aisles as to separate strategies, meeting at the milk, diverging at the bread. A woman from church spotted them once and waved from behind a tower of tangerines. "You too," she sang, "beautiful family." Teo smiled. Bimbo lifted a hand. When the woman disappeared, they both reached for the same loaf. Their fingers collided. Bimbo let go first. On Sunday, after service, the pastor shook Teo's hand with the compassionate squeeze clergy learn, the one that says, "Both God sees you and I'm available on Thursdays." Teo nodded to hard. Bimbo chatted with the choir director about a food drive, her posture bright, her coat immaculate. The children chased one another between kneecaps, their laughter rising to the high beams and returning as echo in the afternoon. An email arrived for Bimbo. Interview confirmed. Tuesday, 10 a.m. She read it twice, then clicked the calendar and wrote it there in blue, small enough not to shout, large enough not to hide. The word interview sat under B, drop off, and above T, pick up. A hinge inside the week. That evening, Teo reheated jollof for the kids while Bimbo ironed a blouse with cuffs that meant business. The steam rose like prayer. When the children were tucked in, he lingered in the hall, listening to the little ones negotiate whose stuffed animal got the best pillow corner, and to Tola, whispering a secret to the dark. In the kitchen, Bimbo slid the iron back into its cradle. She looked at him briefly, without flinching. "Tuesday morning," she said. A fact more than an invitation. He nodded. "I'll take school," he replied. And then, because he needed to give her something she could say yes to, "Good luck." "Thank you," she said, the words unarmed. They stood there between the humming fridge and the steady clock, a meter apart, the span of a marriage and a country. Teo wanted to tell her about the nightmare he'd had the night before, how he'd dreamed the sofa was a raft and the whole apartment had filled with cold, slow water, and he kept lifting the children higher, higher, while Bimbo stood on the counter, dry and furious and dazzling, refusing his hand because that was the right thing to do. He wanted to tell her that he woke with the taste of river on his tongue. He wanted to say, "I'm sorry again, and I know sorry is thin, and I will carry the cost if it lets you breathe." He said none of it. "Good night," she said. "Good night," he answered. When the lights clicked off, the apartment kept its small promises. The radiator shuddered to life. The neighbor upstairs laughed at something generous on television. Snow tapped the window like someone polite at a door. On the couch, Teo lay on his side and watched the orange streetlight draw a weak square on the carpet. In the bedroom, Bimbo checked her bag wallet. Transit card, pen, spare lipstick, printed resume and slid the zipper with a sound that felt like choosing. Separate lives, same house, the calendar kept the peace. The children learned the steps, in the narrow places by the sink, in the hall. At the edge of the bed they passed one another like travelers on a bridge to Slim for two. No one looked down, no one asked how far the water fell. And still, somewhere between the spoon and the soap, the silence sometimes softened. Their son snorted milk through his nose at breakfast and both parents laughed before remembering. Their youngest mispronounced snowbank as snowbanket and Bimbo wrote it in her phone because she wanted to keep something small and sweet. Tola left a drawing on the fridge, 5 stick figures holding hands under a lopsided maple leaf and a sun that took up half the sky. Someone added a 6th, smaller figure in the corner with an arrow that said brother. The arrow was done in black. The question mark was done in blue, neither erased it. They left it there, on the door that kept their cold food and their necessary secrets, and the week moved forward, one blue square, one black square at a time.